If you don't have the right perspective, it's really hard for you to really understand how to think about the right world or the right way. So you've got to put yourself in that position. It's safe to assume that 1% of the agents are doing likely 27% of the volume in any given zip code across this major MLS. And I bet you it's true for your market as well.
What's up, everybody? It's Joe Herrera from the Broker's Desk, coming to you live, as always, from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Taylor may be joining. He may not be. He's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Good news is we're busy, and it's mid-December. Taylor and I very much limit the voices that we listen to. Real estate is one of those things where, you know, there's a million different middle-aged white guys that are willing to tell you everything you need to know about how to run a business. And the reality is you can get into you can go down some really distracting paths if you don't protect your mind space a little bit. One of the individuals that universally he and I have always paid significant attention to is Jimmy Mackin. Jimmy's been a mentor of ours, a partner of ours for coming up on 10 years, Jimmy. I think Taylor and I joined Curator in 2014. There's just a different level of conversation that happens with Jimmy, with Sharon, with Brian Gubernick and Brett Tanner. And like, we just have these guys that whenever we talk, it's 30,000 foot view the whole time. Jimmy was voted best hair in real estate 2 years running. Yes. He's in the running for best beard in real estate.
I'm working on it.
I don't even know if you have competition on that one.
So you always got to be reinventing yourself. Yeah, but happy to be here. Exactly. Happy to be here with you guys. You know, it's interesting. You talk about the 30,000 foot view. I think what gives you a really good perspective on 30,000 foot view is when you're in the trenches every day, meaning when you're actually doing the work. And I think a lot of people right now in our industry who are too removed from day-to-day operations or don't necessarily feel the kind of like the euphoria and terror of entrepreneurship are in many ways tone deaf to what's happening, what it's really like to run a business. And so I think the reason why people have gravitated to my message and the content I put out there is they know I'm just like them. Meaning I run a business. I'm the CEO of a company. I'm the janitor, you know, and then I'm also the guy on stage in front of 6,000 people. And I think that is it's important lesson I learned is that if you don't have the right perspective, it's really hard for you to really understand how to think about the right world or the right way. So you've got to put yourself in that position is the point. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, guys, and talk about whatever would be valuable to your community.
So let's talk about this, Jimmy. We'll kick it off. One of my good friends, there was an individual that we, for years, they made the comment that like, no matter what they do, they cannot lose weight. Mm-hmm. And they would generally be saying this while like pounding nachos, right? And it was like, well, have you tried not eating so many nachos? Yeah. Well, agents right now, I made one of my most favorite reels. So like you're a content creator. I try to create content. Taylor's creating content as well. Like you have these things where you're like, dude, I don't care if anybody likes this because this is just for me. Sure. And one of the pieces of content I created that I like the most is you don't have the right to complain about interest rates unless you're having enough conversations that it actually matters. Mm-hmm. Because like there are agents out there universally like complaining and howling and screaming at the moon about interest rates. Meanwhile, they've stopped advertising. They've stopped prospecting. They're not having conversations. They're not holding open houses. And so my message was kind of like, interest rates are irrelevant to you. Like, how can you complain about interest rates if you're not even putting in the work? Yeah. Am I onto something there, or am I just being a jerk?
Well, it reminds me of, the great late Charlie Munger, who recently passed away at the time in which we're recording this. He passed away maybe a few weeks ago now, died at the age of 99. And I've been going back and reading, his book on just like life lessons. And, there people who worked with Charlie Munger, people who were close to Charlie Munger, people who interfaced with them and had lots of conversations, always would say the same thing, that Charlie Munger was ambivalent to problems. He did not even see them, right? He would Of course there are problems. You're in the business of trying to build something. Like, he fully expected there to be hurdles along the way. So if you take the macro view for a second and you say, and you look at these markets, like let's take the last 4 years, going all the way back to the beginning of the pandemic. There was obviously the very beginning, the problem was, oh my God, the real estate market is completely crashing. And people were talking about this, like, L-shaped, recession recovery. But that lasted about 3 weeks. And then we went to the world where, by the way, I've listened to economists the entire time explain in very logical ways why it was going to take 24 months to recover from a 3-week blip, if it would have turned out to be. The second thing we heard was buyers, it's so difficult being a buyer because you're being outbid by every single person out there. And you have to have cash. You have to put 30% above the ask price. And if you're not prepared to make a move, you're likely going to be homeless. That was the problem. And then we had this weird period where we kind of were like sort of stuck in flux, where the market was so unpredictable. No one kind of knew what to do, and it sort of froze the market, meaning interest rates were rising. There was a looming recession that we've still been kind of waiting for. And sellers were not selling because they didn't want to sell. They were selling because they weren't sure what to do. And buyers were not buying or they were thinking about buying, but they're also like, should I wait because maybe we hit the peak and prices are going to drop 25%? And so that was a problem. And then we went into the era where interest rates were just climbing up to 8%. We remember that. That was like 3 months ago, where like no one could possibly afford a house. And now rates have dropped down to, what the high sixes now, maybe even if you have an FHA, maybe a little bit lower. So if you look at the market, there's always going to be problems. And there's an expression in Spanish, and I'm not going to say it in Spanish because I don't know Spanish, but I love the expression, which is like, that person could drown in a cup of water. And I think there is a sense in our industry where if you look at problems as problems and not opportunities, or you are focused on things that you cannot control, like, you have already lost. I mean, like, you have already lost. And so in this market, guys, we all know this. It's going to get tougher. It's going to become more competitive. It's going to require more energy, more discipline, more skill to succeed. And so you can't waste a single second of your energy worrying about what side of the bed Jerome Powell is going to wake up on. I mean, to answer your question directly, Joe, yes, like, problems are just, what's the expression from Edison? Problems are just opportunities hiding in work clothes or wearing work clothes. Like, that's what we're dealing with here in this market.
Well, and to quote Joe Herrera, I don't remember when he said this, what movie it was. He said something about like more money, more problems or something. And so like the problem, one of the things, Jimmy, when I hear you talk about Charlie Munger, it seems like, I think the way we found you guys, actually, I know the way we found you guys and first introduced to you is we did a Google search and just said the word was sexiest sexiest real estate website. Yes. And it was just this long journey of like researching who built this one. But we found like the 3 of the top 5 sexiest real estate websites in 2014 were put together and designed by you and Chris. And that's why we found you. But one of the things that I've always respected about you is you've been really good at knowing how to package stuff and the source to go looking for good information that will help you make a decision. One of my favorite guys, like the wisdom he spits out is a guy named Naval Ravikant. And he said, if you want to make the wrong decision, ask everyone. And his like, I take that to mean like, if you want to make the right decision in a really difficult market, or in any market, find out who it is that you can go to for information. And we've always looked to you guys. You and Chris have just been wizards at giving out good information to crack the code in any market. But like right now, what is it? What is your focus, and who are you looking to? Are there any gurus in the interest world, the market world, the lending world? Like, where are you looking?
This is my love language, Taylor, because I am fanatical about this.
You and Taylor speak the same love language.
It is
so far apart.
Well, the funny thing is that I was listening to an interview many years ago with the founder and CEO of Airbnb, Brian Chesky. And Airbnb is a juggernaut, man. I mean, you know, you look at that company, like, man, that company, if you read some of the media and the headlines, like Airbnb must be struggling. And the last time I checked, their market cap was like $80 billion or something. And they're growing like crazy. Their CEO is a really interesting CEO. You know, he's about my age. He's maybe a little bit older than I am. And so, you know, I'm always just impressed by the fact that how far he's gone in such a short amount of time. But he had this bit of wisdom that he said, if you're trying to learn a new field, he said, you should spend the first few weeks finding out who is the expert in that field. That is like, so if you have a new skill you want to learn, let's say in real estate, you want to say, hey, I want to triple my listing side business in the next, 12 to 24 months. Okay. Who are the single best listing agents in every market across the US that's comparable to your market? And say, okay, what are they doing? And you could, and there isn't one way to generate business. There's many ways to generate business, but you should spend that time analyzing the top performers to identify what are the characteristics, what are the strategies, what are they doing differently than everybody else. Now, as it relates to who do I follow right now, David Senra, who is the author or the host of a solo podcast called Founders, is my go-to. So like I'm a podcast guy. I went from listening to audiobooks at like 1.5 speed. Now I've kind of shifted more towards podcasting. So Invest Like the Best with Patrick O'Shaughnessy, insanely good podcast. Business Breakdown, insanely good podcast. Founders with David Senra. I went to go see David Senra speak at an event in New York City where he was just doing an interview, and he's described as a maniac on a mission. He will read 3 or 4 biographies about a particular individual. He'll take notes, he'll distill down as a lesson, and then he'll record an hour-long podcast to give you all the highlights. That then allows you to say, oh, I want to dig in and learn more about Sol Price, the guy who was the predecessor to Walmart or to, Costco's as an example. I mean, it's like, it is caffeine for the brain. I mean, if you can listen to this dude talk about business, you can't help but get excited and fired up to get out there and try to build something special. So I think from a podcasting perspective, Invest Like the Best, Founders, Business Breakdown, those are probably my top 3. They're always in rotation. I love listening to Scott Galloway, the Prof G Show. He does a Monday morning market, kind of giving commentary on the market, which I find fascinating. And as it relates to books recently, well, actually, I'll come back here for a second. Within the real estate industry, Taylor, I've always been a fan of following people like Mike Simonson from Altos Research, right? Lance Lambert, who now just started his own, real estate analytics company. Also, I'll give you a quick pro tip here. I mean, this is something that no one does in real estate, or very few people do that they should be doing, is I love listening to earnings calls from publicly traded real estate companies to figure out, you got to get past.
You're the one guy. You're the one guy on there every time.
Oh, man. Well, you know what? You just got to, when the CFO starts talking, just fast forward, because they're talking about, that's usually a pretty boring section, but I still listen to it. But I like Open Doors earnings calls. I'll listen to those. Zillow, Redfin, anyone in the real estate space, I'll listen to, because here's why. Is because these individuals have to explain to their investors why their vision for the future is worth investing in. So they tell a really compelling story around where is the market going? What do they expect to happen? Where is their opportunity? I mean, who got a guy who's just he is a giant amongst men is Andy Florence. Andy Florence from Homes.com is having a moment right now. Andy Florence is on a one-man mission to dethrone Zillow from being the biggest portal. And this dude, this dude is a great white shark. What he's done with CoStar is truly remarkable. So when you listen to people like that, you can't help but say, oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Oh, I haven't thought about it that way. So podcasting, following people on social media, like ones I mentioned, and then just earnings calls, man. I'm telling you, there's gold in that.
Wow. No, that was amazing. I just wrote a huge list, Jimmy. If I get nothing else out of this time spent, I just got my podcast, books, everything. That was solid gold. Hopefully everybody took notes.
Yeah, for sure. So Jimmy, give me the persona of the agent in 2024 that is going to succeed. Like, what do they look like? You analyze this stuff. You know this stuff better than anybody. Like, when we look to 2024 and we look back on it and we're like, dude, that agent crushed it. That team crushed it. Like, who is it?
Yeah, I was looking at some data earlier today in the largest MLS in the country, and I was analyzing the how the production is broken down in zip codes by agents. And what we found when just doing a very simple analysis is that the top 10 zip codes in California, about 3% of the agents, and listen carefully because this is important, about 3% of the agents who sold a listing in that zip code, not agents who serve that zip code, but agents who actually sold a listing in that zip code, accounted for over 27% of the overall volume. So when you zoom the lens out a bit more, it's safe to assume that 1% of the agents are doing likely 27% of the volume in any given zip code across this major MLS. And I bet you it's true for your market as well. And so when you ask,
I'm guessing if you dug deep enough down that rabbit hole, you would find that not only is that 1%, 27%, it probably starts to multiply upon itself when you realize that a lot of those 1%ers are working together. Like, a lot of them are in a team environment.
It's a great point. You're probably absolutely right, which is, and I think it's maybe the persona of, to answer your question about the persona, it's like this is going to be a winners and losers market. Now, you guys know, let's take it from the concept of the persona of an individual agent and the persona of a team, right? And then we'll talk about brokerages in a second. So the persona of an individual agent who will be successful in 2024 is an agent who joins a high-performing team. I mean, it is the absolute best thing you can do is to say, hey, Joe and Taylor, I see you guys are doing some amazing work. I'd love to join, be a part of your company, support you in your goals and help me achieve my goals. That is going, and you may give up 30% of your split, or 40% of your split, depending, or 50% of your split, depending on the type of lead source. But that agent who is willing to look at the bigger picture and not get hung up on what percentage of the GCI they're going to actually take home is an agent who is going to win. I'm very fearful of the solo agents who are hanging their hat with a large brokerage with 300 agents who provide no value, no support, no leads, no transaction management, no marketing, no technology. I think those agents, unless they have a big enough sphere of influence, guys, unless they've been in business long enough where they really hanging their hat with a broker is simply, a matter of, call it just like administrative work, right? Or compliance work. I think the solo agent who's been in the industry for less than 5 years, 10 years, who doesn't have a big enough SOI to support their production goals, I mean, their willingness to give a little bit up to get a lot more is so important. And I've seen this, by the way. I have seen this now, I mean, more times than I can count, where I see really talented agents like jump from one brokerage or one team to another, thinking that it's all about splits. And I think it's one of the biggest, I know we're speaking our own book here, guys, but I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that I think solo agents make right now in this market is not realizing if they can narrow the scope of things they focus on by partnering with others who can cover down for all those other activities, they will be 10 times more productive. If all I'm doing is making calls, showing up to appointments, helping clients buy and sell, and everything else is handled by the team or the organization, like, it slows the entire game down. Unfortunately, we think that, oh, well, I'm giving up 40% for that. Well, guess what? I mean, that's thousands of dollars a month of your own investment, which is high risk. That's hours of work of compliance and management. And like, it's just not worth it. So I'd love to get you guys your reaction to that first piece, but I just think it's a solo agent. Like, you got to be willing to partner here.
I think it's hard to not take some responsibility and accountability for not painting the picture correctly as a team leader. Like, I think over the years, I've created the perception that like the team is only as good as its last lead we generated. Like, so it's almost like I've been working for the last year or so to really break down the 100% myth, because there is no such thing. But as a team, we haven't always approached it, and our relationship with Place is kind of helping us to paint a bigger picture. We haven't always approached it as, all right, cool. Before we ever talk about our team, we have to establish that there is no such thing as 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Like Realty One Group came out of Vegas, is famous for the 100% concept. But okay, cool. Well, let's start with the gas you put in your car. Let's talk about client appreciation gifts. Let's talk about the $500 round of golf you spent to acquire that client that you were golfing with about a house. Like, let's talk about your magazine ads and your this and your this and your this. Like on a monthly basis, you may say I closed 2 deals at $10,000 a pop, and I got, from my brokerage, I got 20,000 minus some transaction fees. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, the transaction fees represent a percentage. So let's call it 5. So now you're at 95. And then you pay your CRM $700 a month. You're paying $2,000 a month for lead generation. And you start adding it up, and you're like, all right, cool. You're probably already around a 60% profit margin on your business. Now, to your point, Jimmy, what if you remove all those things? And not only are you saying the 40% is covered by the team, but you don't have to even expend the brain power to manage that 40%. And you don't have to put up the capital investment ahead of time for the months where you close 0. Therefore, that has to go against the next month, right? And so it's like, I think, though, I've been part of the problem in that I've allowed that narrative to even exist in my conversations about what a team does, rather than just squash it from the beginning and say like, all right, cool. For us to even have a logical conversation, we have to understand the profit margin of even the quote unquote 100% solo agents at 100% brokerages is at best 60%. Like, you're starting from there.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I don't want to forget this. I'll come back to Dr. Julie Gardner here in a second. But one of the things that you just remind me of is this idea of sort of when you dilute your focus, right? Or when you can sort of, in this case, when you can kind of dilute your focus, where you spread yourself across multiple areas, it's just, you just take a hard job and make it that much harder. And I think it's the reality, is that when you realize the risk, I tweeted this recently. I said most agents are 2 or 3 bad months from going out of business, because if you have to carry all that debt or all those expenses on your own because you want to get a higher split on your next deal, and then at the same time you are having to learn all of these things as opposed to learning from people who have been there and done. Like, talk about a cheat code, guys. I would much rather partner with anybody who has been there and done that. So I'm starting on third base. I'm not in the dugout. And so you guys have been lead genning for 10 plus years on Facebook. And imagine if, and I mean, you guys have lived through every kind of iteration and variable, and you found something that's worked, and you've run that play over and over again. Well, imagine if you knew nothing and you started where you are today. It would take you at least a year to 2 years to maybe even get to the level where you're at if you were successful. And that is, so from a solo agent perspective, I would say solo agents need to understand that there's power in partnerships. And if you can say my desired end state is to make $250,000 this year, okay, not what is the best, or the broker that has the best splits, but what is the broker who's going to enable me to get there faster with less risk and with the most or the highest degree of confidence. That is it's such a mindset shift from the way most agents think right now that I think causes a lot of problems in our industry.
Well, let me ask you this
too.
Oh, go ahead.
Just one comment. I know you got a good question on that. Like Dan Sullivan's book, Who Not How. To me, the real estate team is the perfect model of the who not how, because so many people, when they come into this, they believe that they are the how and the solution, and everything's going to be, easy. But that book creates a non-linear adventure, a non-linear real estate journey when you get on a team. And then my question would be, there's people that are probably watching this. Hopefully there's at least one person watching this, but when they see this and they understand being on a team and the advantage of being on a team, but what would you tell a brand new agent or an agent that's been in the business a couple of years that just isn't doing as much business as they wanted? They're looking for a team. What are the qualifications? What are the checklists? What should a team, when they go searching for the perfect team that's going to help them through this tricky real estate market, what do they need to find?
Well, first off, this is such a great question, Taylor. I don't know what the percentage is of companies that are in real estate right now that didn't go through the global financial crisis, but it's pretty high. Meaning that, like, think about Compass as an example. I love Compass as a brand. I think it's a fantastic brand. I got a lot of Compass clients. Compass is a company that started after the global financial crisis, as an example. And in some instances, I would be looking for agents who have some battle scars with them, who didn't necessarily just grow their business during boom times. Now, Compass, I'm not picking on Compass here. They have lots of agents who have those battle scars. So maybe the company's a little bit young, but the leaders within that company have a ton of experience. I think Mark McLaughlin is a great example of that. So in my mind, I would say first and foremost, is that individual, do they have experience selling real estate in a down market where it's a little bit more challenging? Or were they just part of the sort of wave that we saw? Like, it's what is the expression? You don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Like, the tide has kind of come out, right? So I think the first thing is, like, show me their resume. What have they done? The second thing is, when I make decisions around partnerships, there's two components here. This is important. Number one is you, and this is even more important than number two, is, of course, number two being, you should optimize for the financial impact. What is the financial impact of this partnership? How is it going to help me achieve my financial goals? But number one is far more important. Number one is you optimize for learning, which is, if I partner with this company, am I going to get better at my job? And am I going to become more skilled at what I do? And yes, if I make more money, if I achieve number two, that's also a huge positive. It's an important factor. But if I achieve number two and I don't achieve number one, I just have wasted a lot of time. And although I made some money, I didn't really get any better. And so I always think about this idea of, if I'm looking for a team lead, Taylor, I'm saying to myself, what can I learn from these individuals? What type of brand do they have online? Are they well respected in the industry? Do they have lots of reviews from consumers? Am I going? Do they have the sort of battle scars to prove that they have a plan in place to help me navigate the next 2 or 3 years? And then above all else, I think for me, there's always that sort of cultural fit. Meaning, even for people that work for me, Taylor, listen, I got a big family. I got 5 brothers and sisters. We got like 15 little kids running around at this stage. My parents are still alive. They got like 6 brothers, and my dad's got 13 brothers and sisters. I mean, we got a big family. Work for me is not a family environment. I mean, no one's going to see a curator. No one's going to be like, hey, fam, how's it? Like, that's not my style. I make that sort of distinction between family and business. I'm there to support them. I'm there to help them be successful, but we're all part of this sort of professional sports team. And so if you're from a culture perspective, if you're looking for someone to say, you're doing a great job, I love you so much, I'm so happy to have you as part of the family, we're not a good culture fit for you. Because my response to that is, you did a great job. That's what the money's for, right? Here's the money that we're paying you. So that is going to turn a lot of people off. So I think from a cultural fit perspective, what type of culture do you want to be a part of is an important factor that goes into deciding what company you want to work with. So those are sort of the key factors I'd be looking at, Taylor.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, I know you guys aren't big on America, but I am. And Irving Berlin put together the verses that are actually etched on the book that the Statue of Liberty is holding, right? Or they're on the Statue of Liberty. And it says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And I think in that there's some advice for team leaders, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Jimmy, is there a little bit of the principle when looking for agents to join your team? It's like, if you haven't had your heart broke, you're not ready for love. I mean, it's just so hard to take brand new agents who don't know anything and just go like, hey, trust me, like joining our team is so profitable for you, because there's almost this world right now. And Taylor and I have talked a lot about ramping up our recruiting exercises for our team to go like, there are people out there right now going like, dude, I don't care what percentage of what. I need to make $100,000.
Yeah.
So let's go do that.
Yeah.
And there's almost a world now for team leaders to go find the broken-hearted, the broken-minded, the broken-walleted agent that's like, wow, I tried it. It was cool when I could just go to the gym and people would say, oh, you're a realtor. Let me like sell my house with you. That's not the market we're in now. Regardless of the way you look at it, that's not going to be the market in 2024. You probably need to be a refuge for battered sailors that are like, dude, this sucks, but I want to provide for my family. Am I right? Like from a team leader perspective, looking to hire agents.
The way I would summarize that, Joe, is that in 2021, it was all about the ceiling. In 24, it's all about the floor. Meaning that, hey, I want to make 250, but I really can't make less than $80,000, right, to be able to pay my bills. And so I think that is an important thing to realize in this market, is recognizing the floor really matters here. And what I would say is, when I look for people, when I've made some really dumb hires, and I blame myself, not the people I hired. When I have been successful at it, there's almost always been one thing that has been true, which is this person has a blue collar mindset, and they are willing to put in the work. I mean, even if they're inexperienced, even if they're raw and they're rough around the edges, even if they don't have the knowledge they need, if they've got that blue collar mindset, and you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. If they're willing to show up and do the work, and they're willing to learn, and they don't have an ego, and they're not here to prove to everyone else how smart they are, and they're not looking for constant validation and coddling, and they're here to say, hey, listen, how can I get better? And they can listen to feedback. I mean, as you guys know, I'm from the Boston area. Like, we're pretty direct in Boston. So when we give feedback, it's like, hey, like we're not really good at nuance, I think is the lesson there. And so, are they willing to take that feedback? I mean, give me 10 of those people, right? And we'll storm the castle. Get 100 people who are entitled, who think they deserve more, who aren't willing to put the work in, who are, who have no reason to or no real, they haven't put any effort into to achieving their goals, and they're just expected to be handed to them. Like, I mean, those people are completely toxic to any culture. And this is not generational, to be clear. I'm not talking about Gen Z. I mean, you'll find boomers, you'll find Gen Xers, you'll find millennials, you'll find Gen Zers who share those common characteristics. They're expecting people to give something to them. Guess what? Like, it's too hard. I mean, and I think this is, especially in real estate. I know real estate's one of those jobs. Real estate's one of those jobs where it looks easy when you're not the one doing it. I mean, that is the truth of the matter. And listen, the crazy thing is, I've never sold real estate in my career. Been in the industry for 15 years, but I've built businesses. And I think that's what me and the clients and the community that I have share in common, is that, building a business is I mean, that's where you really find out what you're made of, because, man, it is. Mark Andreessen has a great line on this. Mark Andreessen, one of the early internet founders, built a company called Netscape, if I'm not mistaken. He was part of the Mozilla project, helping bring like browsers online. He says, in startups, there are only two emotions: euphoria and terror. And I think that pretty much describes real estate.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, let me.
Oh, go ahead.
So you talked about the perfect employee, the perfect partner, the perfect whoever to build your startup or to work with is someone that's willing to put in work. And Joe and I have been hashing this out and deep diving and talking to people about it. The definition of putting in work right now to become a successful real estate agent is blank. So, and to be more specific, let me get real specific. How many conversations, and you guys are the masters, you kind of opened my eyes towards, like, it's just a math equation. Curator really taught me that as emotional as real estate is, if you want to make money at real estate, it's a math equation. So just based on the teams that you coach and the high level stuff you're doing, how many conversations a day does a real estate agent need to have right now in a market that is not 2021? What is that? What are you guys saying?
It's a great, so we got the math on this, Taylor. I had an opportunity to partner with my guy, Tom Ferry, this past year to develop a program called 100K in 100 days. And Tom and I partnered together this summer to say, hey, look, we're going to bring we saw the market shifting. We're saying we're going to bring a strategy and a plan to help agents in the Tom Ferry ecosystem get a bunch of listings. And so in that plan, we developed, basically 100 days worth of marketing strategies and sales strategies to help them get business. And through that process, we have generated, and there's only been a few thousand agents who participated, we've generated over 6,500 listings, not listing appointments, listings in less than 100 days. It was within last time I looked at data, within the first 75 days. And what we did is we actually took the time to analyze and go back and say, okay, based on the activities we've given agents and based on the time it takes to complete these activities, how much time would it actually take an agent per day to get a listing? When you look at the math, and here's how the data shakes out. If you want to get 10 listings per year, you're going to have to average about 30 to 35 minutes of what we refer to as prospecting. And I'll define that in just one moment. 30 to 35 minutes per day of prospecting. If you just want to get 10 listings. If you want to get 20, that number basically doubles, right? 62. If you want to get 24, that number gets to 74. If you want to get 30 listings, which again, at your price point would be a great year, you're looking at about an hour and a half per day of prospecting. Now, let me define what prospecting means. Prospecting could be DMing people on social media. It could be sending them a Facebook Messenger, to people who are actively online right now. It could mean circle dialing around a recent sale. It could mean calling those 6-month-old expireds. It could mean following up with those Facebook leads that came in 3 years ago that never bought a property. Making sure that you're actually reaching out and making contact with people. And the source is not as important as the energy and effort you put into it. Now, of course, and you guys are both trained in exactly what to say, the scripts matter, the angle matter, the personalization matters. But if you can get in the habit, Taylor, of putting at least 30 to 60 minutes in per day of what we refer to as prospecting, where it's one-to-one outreach via DM, via texting, via calling, right? If you can do that per day, you're going to get between 10 and 20 listings next year. Now, this data is off of thousands of agents who generated over 6,000 listings in literally the worst listing market in recent memory. And so I would say for most agents, and here's the challenge, Taylor, and you guys know this firsthand. This is the bane of most team leaders' existence. The challenge is day one, you put it in an hour and nothing happens. And you're like, well, this is not working. Let's see what happens day two. Day two, put another hour in. You have a few conversations, no appointments. Day three, you know what? I got some other things I can be working on, like scrolling through social media. I'll make some calls, and then that number goes from 1 hour to 15 minutes. Day four, you're like, well, let's skip it, right? I'm busy. I got things going on. Day five, next week I'm going to pick things back up. And then by the time that you get to week two, guess what? Nothing happens. And you're going to say, oh, I tried it. It didn't work for me. The reality is that the law of big numbers kicks in at the most inconvenient times. So you can be putting an entire month of prospecting in and you don't book anything until week 4 and get 6 appointments. Welcome to marketing. Welcome to sales. Yeah. And so I would say the math is pretty clear and evident. Unfortunately, if you're not willing, there's a great line by Izzy Sharp. Izzy Sharp, it might be Izzy or Iggy Sharp from Four Seasons. Someone will help me out in the chat here. I think it's Izzy. Izzy Sharp had a great line. He's the founder of the Four Seasons. He says, excellence is the capacity to take pain. And in prospecting, it is nothing but pain. But it is worth it when you see the results, but you got to give yourself time, Taylor.
Well, and let me just break the math. Just one question on that math. So about an hour a day prospecting will get you 10 to 20 listings a year. So if we're talking an hour a day on a 365-day year, but someone's only working 5 days a week and taking a few weeks off for vacations, are we saying it's 7 hours a week is the math there?
No, listen, I'm giving you guys weekends off. I'm giving you holidays off. We actually looked at it at 260 working days a year. So we're giving Joe time to golf, man. We're giving you guys
100 days.
And
100 days.
We'll give it to you, brother. So, 260 days, which by the way, is like, that's like an off year for most agents, to be clear, right? Like that's a pretty like, Southern California surfing, eating fish tacos kind of schedule.
So, I mean, the issue is this is the best kept secret in real estate, is that because the vast majority of agents didn't get into real estate to work hard, not a lot of people work hard. Like when you break down the actual activities done by agents, and I'm not belittling our own field, I'm just saying people are not grinding. Like a lot of people got in because they're like, man, if I close 3 deals a year, it'll pay for some vacations. I could get the kitchen remodel done. My spouse's income covers our family expenses. Like, let me just make a little bit of money on the side. There are agents who just grind, but there's so much entrepreneurship in our industry, like just being straight up honest.
Yeah.
Jimmy, we've got like 3 minutes left, which this is a really big topic to take in 3 minutes, but seems like we've hit a little bit of a pause on the DOJ, the NAR stuff. Seems like some of the big brokerages that were named originally and kind of got the judgment thrown on them in Kansas City have set up for appeals, which at least kicks the can down the road for a while before we get some sort of settlement on this. What's your take on all of this? Like what should agents be focusing on? Obviously, independent agents have zero control over any of this.
Yeah.
But like what's been your takeaway from the last month and a half of kind of potential catastrophe to maybe delayed catastrophe to maybe nothing changes? I mean, it's all over the place.
I think what's been the most interesting thing, and I think it probably shines a light on where there's white space in the market, is consumers will always be willing to pay a premium for quality. And what we have right now in real estate is we have a mediocre product at large, right? There are people in this industry who do amazing work and they are vastly underpaid. And then we get a whole bunch of people who are largely incompetent who make as much money as the people who are great at their job. And so we have this disparity, which is kind of unlike most industries. I mean, if you go to McDonald's, you ain't paying the same for a meal, for a Happy Meal, if you go to a Michelin star restaurant. And so what we've got in real estate, because of the nature of real estate, is we have kind of all gravitated towards the same fees that we charge. And obviously some people do some discount brokerage, but for the most part, an average agent will charge as much as an exceptional agent. And so when I look at that, I think what an incredible opportunity for the cream to rise here. For agents, I said this before, but I believe it to be true, which is there's never been a better time to be a great agent. Because when a great agent can properly articulate their value proposition, and I have some recommendations before we run on how to do that, but they can properly articulate their value proposition, they can stand out amongst a sea of sameness. And so what I'm hoping comes from all of this is I'm hoping that really good agents who are talented, who do great work, who deeply care about customer experience, who invest in their customers for the long haul, who don't put them in a bad position, who aren't there just to make another paycheck. I'm hoping those agents, and you guys know who I'm talking about in this space, the agents who actually give a shit, the agents who actually care, the agents who act as a fiduciary responsible, a partner for the customers. I'm hoping those agents figure out a way to say, hey, let me separate myself from the rest of these bozos in this industry. And until we haven't had to do that, but now we might have to. And so there's 2 books I'd recommend on this topic. There's a book, and this goes back to a person who I actually, just as a quick aside here, to add to your list, Taylor, Dr. Julie Girdner, who writes is on Twitter, Dr. Julie Girdner. She has a blog called Ultra Successful. I mean, it's incredible. I'm a huge Dr. Julie Girdner fan. I would definitely check that person out. But the book I was going to recommend was from another woman, another powerhouse. Her name's April Dunford. She wrote a book called Obviously Awesome, which talks about positioning. And she just wrote another book called Sales Pitch, which talks about how to actually pitch your services. So, Joe, I think the short answer is, who knows what the DOJ is going to do? Who knows what settlements are going to come? Probably going to take a long time. But now is a time for agents to reevaluate their value proposition and figure out how they can stand out and a sea of sameness and the sort of this real estate Hunger Games that we're in, because I think a great agent is one of the most underpaid professionals in the business. And I think that if we can, as agents, do a better job of communicating that, it will only be beneficial for the consumer and for us and our businesses.
This is so good. Jimmy's just one of those guys that you just know it's going to hit. I think this was a good note-taking session. I'm going to go back and watch it and subscribe to a bunch of podcasts and buy a bunch of books. Jimmy, we're grateful for you, man. I think it's just one of those things where you see these old businessmen and they just have their crew and they just do work. They've just been through it. And I think one of the best things that ever happened to Taylor and I's careers when we found you and Curator in 2014. And, it's just been, you're just somebody that you're an advisor. Hopefully we're a sounding board for you as well. And we're just grateful for you, man. So anybody follow Jimmy. He's one of the few people worth following on Twitter.
Yes.
I share a lot of your stuff to my Instagram feed. I've always, Jimmy's, he's an outsider with an insider's perspective, or he's an insider with an outsider's perspective. However you want to see it. You're not in the trenches of selling houses every day, but you're the guy that is helping make sure that agents have the ability, like you said, now's a great time to be a great agent. And you're one of the few that have the ability to help tell agents not just how to be great, but make sure that they get the support and the technology and the platform for which to display their greatness.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the love, fellas. It was great seeing you both, and happy holidays to you and your fam. And I'm sure we're going to be bumping each other soon.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, buddy.